COVID then and now. The email that cost me friends and resulted in accusations of me wanting people to die. I sent the following email on March 25th, 2020, to a select group of friends. The result was that a couple of my friends told me I was cruel and wished for people to die. A few friends seemed to disappear, and a group of friends that I've skied with for 25 years told me they would not share a cabin at the ski resort with me and accused me of engaging in dangerous practices. Just for the record, I did wear a mask when required, I did get 2 jabs, and I did limit any activity that required being in a crowd. Also, for the record, I had COVID 4 times, 2 for which I tested positive, 1 at the beginning of the COVID pandemic when tests were not available, and the last time when I got sick and simply did not bother to test myself. For years later, the evidence is clear. Most people who died from COVID were either old, already sick, or both. The death toll, while high, was not much worse than a bad flu season. It is doubtful that the draconian measures enforced on us by the government had much effect. Worst of all, it put hundreds of thousands of businesses out of businesses, robbed our children of 2 years of education, and initiated a government spending spree that continues to this day and that has resulted in massive inflation and massive government debt. Further, the government forced people to take a vaccine that appears to have caused serious side effects in many people. Below is the text of my email. Sorry, friends, I know this is a long read, but take a few minutes to understand what is happening. We all need to be worried, but not about the virus. Do you remember the swine flu pandemic of 2009? According to the U.S. Center for Disease Control, from April 12, 2009 to April 10, 2010, CDC estimated there were 60.8 million cases, range 43.3 to 89.3 million, 274,304 hospitalizations, range 195,086 to 402,719, and 12,469 deaths, range 8,868 to 18,306. In the United States, due to the H1N1 PDM09 virus. Worldwide, the CDC estimates deaths from the swine flu were as high as 575,000. For those of you old enough to remember, do you remember flight restrictions, public events being canceled, sporting events being canceled, ski resorts being shut down, schools being closed, and more? You don't remember those things because they did not happen. So, what has changed since 2009? Are we suddenly more concerned about old people dying from the flu? What about the coronavirus is different to cause our leaders to throw the world economy into a recession that could very well be worse than 2008 and may be as bad as the Great Depression? Current statistics as of March 14th, 2020 report 150,000 coronavirus cases and 5,600 deaths worldwide. Of course, the reported cases only include people who have tested positive for the virus. It does not include all those people who got the virus who thought they had the flu or a bad cold and recovered. I returned from Europe at the end of January. I spent 3 hours at Heathrow Airport. The airport was swarming with Chinese. This was right around Chinese New Year. 3 days after returning, I came down with a fever, coughing, chills, and so on. Having heard nothing about the coronavirus at that time, I assumed I just had the flu. A week later, I was fine. So, the number of real cases of coronavirus are significantly greater, more like 500,000 cases. Assuming that is correct, the death rate from coronavirus is about the same as the regular flu, 1%. Let's go back to 2 key questions. First, why are our leaders willing to throw the world economy into a global recession that could be as bad as the Great Depression? And second, how did the world leaders all agree so quickly that these draconian measures were needed? The answer to those 2 questions is one and the same. But to understand the answer, you must go back in history. Since the founding of the United States, there have been 2 political philosophies fighting it out in the world. The first philosophy is that upon which the United States was founded, power in the people and the government as an instrument of the people. The second philosophy was one where society was orchestrated from an all-powerful group of elites who decided what was and what was not good for the people. The first philosophy has endured and succeeded. Countries that have emulated that philosophy have seen economic prosperity and better lives for their citizens. The second philosophy has been tried time and again in various ways and has failed. The Soviet Union, Hitler's Germany, Mao's China, Venezuela, and Cuba. Even Israel, India, and the United Kingdom all adopted some form of top-down, centrally planning as an economic model following World War II. Argentina, in the early part of the last century, is another example. All failed. So if central control, big government, and elitist rule doesn't work, why do we keep trying it? The reason is simple. It is part of human nature for some people in a group to want to control what the other people do. All you must do is to be a member of a club, a team, or a committee to understand that. Why do people act that way? 3 reasons. First, some people thrive on power. Being able to tell others what to do is powerful. Second, some people use their power to enhance their own financial well-being. We see this all the time and across the globe with people in powerful positions, whether as the head of nations or as the head of multinational corporations. Third, some people hold core beliefs that the average person is not capable of making wise decisions in free market economies. So countries in the world need an elite ruling class who will make decisions for most of the people. To that end, these elitists continue to push for a centrally planned, controlled economy, controlled, of course, by them. They push their agenda by taking over the education system, by attacking the wealthy, even though the key players themselves are wealthy. By attacking some segment of society. For Nazi Germany, it was the Jews. In the United States today, it is old white people. And by offering free stuff to citizens in exchange for their vote. The problem is that the people are not as stupid as the elitists believe, and whether on a large scale, such as the Soviet Union, or on a small scale, social democrat parties in Europe. The failures are apparent, and sooner or later, the people go back to a system that favors independence and results in a backlash against the elite, Trump being elected in the United States, Johnson in the UK, and other more right-wing governments in Eastern Europe. The failure of central control by the elitists has the elitists fuming. For the better part of 200 years, they have tried to implement their planned economies through socialism, communism, government regulation, redistribution of wealth, government takeovers of major corporations, and developing a class of citizens that is entirely reliant on the largest of the central government for their very existence. So how does all of this relate to the coronavirus? It relates because these same elitists, mostly bureaucrats who are not elected, have been working behind the scenes to develop strategies under which they can once again move to a centrally planned, all-powerful government run by them. They have tried it extensively through such organizations as the World Trade Organization, the World Bank, and the United Nations. But even their efforts in those arenas have not worked. So, for years, the people in these large international organizations and in thousands of domestic agencies have been developing a plan that will put them back in control. They were sitting back waiting for, and most likely plotting, some catastrophic event that would allow them to flex their muscles and take back control of governments and businesses around the globe. They hung their hats on many global events, but none were significant enough to get the support of people across the globe to put up with draconian government action. With the winds changing against them, they stopped waiting for such a global event, and they created one. And that is the coronavirus threat. No, they did not create the coronavirus. The Chinese did that either by accident, eating bats and other obnoxious critters, or by design. But the elitists have used it. And while past threats of running out of oil, remember the 70s, or mass starvations of billions of people, remember the 60s, and even the global climate change issue, were not enough for the people to support a totalitarian government takeover, in the threat of mass death from the coronavirus, they found their cause. And of course, the complicit media has gone along with their cause. The New York Times reported that 214 million people in the United States could get the virus and won. 7 million could die. Based on these wildly inflated numbers, the elitists through government and cross-government agencies have moved to take control of private enterprise in draconian fashion, and further, are supporting government intervention to make citizens even more reliant on the government. The plot has been to throw the world into panic create a global recession, then use government to bail out the businesses and citizens with hosts of new government programs, spending, bureaucracies, and so on. This plot has been on the drawing boards for years, waiting for deployment. And why now? Why this virus? In part because for the elitists, the re-election of Trump and the breakup of the European Union are two of the greatest threats to their rule. Once the virus passes, and we find out that it really was not that bad, the elitists will tell us the only reason 1.7 million people in the US did not die was because of their actions. They will push and may very well be successful in expanding the size, scope, and control of government to such a degree that we will in effect end up with a government much like the ones they have envisioned previously that have failed. But failure doesn't matter to them. It is about power, it is about control, and it is about the continuation of a ruling class that is threatened by individual freedom and liberty.